Right, so your final question in the Elizabeth paper is the one that you always groan about in class. It's the big 16 marker. Now, if you haven't watched uh, the other one of this, the 12 marker, that one is really important to understanding this question in terms of how you're going to go about structuring it. Okay, so please make sure that you've watched that one first just to build up your knowledge. So in terms of this 16 marker then, we've got that question here. The main cause of tensions between Elizabeth and Mary, Queen of Scots, was Mary's claim to the English throne. How far do you agree? Explain your answer. Now, it is always going to be of a similar structure to this, same structure of it gives a statement and then how far do you agree. Please note that it is never do you agree, do you disagree. It's always how far do you agree. So we're always going to be talking about this kind of sliding scale of agreement. Now, once again, we see our suggestion from the exam board here. So just as I said in the last question for question 2, this is a suggestion. You don't have to use it. I'd much rather read about something that you do know than something that you definitely have no idea what you are talking about. A reminder also that these suggested points are not necessarily whole paragraphs in themselves. They can be points within a greater paragraph. Again, you'll see down here, you must also use information of your own. So therefore that has to go into our paragraphs as well. So ultimately, this is what we call our iPad question. If I just go down here, this is not our individual paragraph structure. Our individual paragraph structure is going to be the same as the 12 marker. So another reason why we needed to watch that one first of point, evidence, explain, and link. But in terms of where we put those paragraphs, it's going to fall into this structure here on our iPad. So introduction, simply give your view. Here you are saying how far do you agree? You are answering that question in a couple of lines. Then you are going to aim to do 2 positive paragraphs. Now, by positive, we mean about your view. And this is really, really important. In an argument, you don't start off with somebody else's view. In an argument, you start with what you think, and you are going to do exactly the same here. So if you agree with the statement, this is where you say it with 2 paragraphs that back up your view. If you disagree with the statement, this is also where you say that, and you back up again with 2 paragraphs about why you disagree with that. Okay, so it's positive of your view. Whichever way you believe, you make your case here with 2 paragraphs. Then you're going to go on to the against paragraph. Now, this is against your view. Now, it's really important here you don't simply say, oh, I also agree or I also disagree, depending on which way you've gone in your positive paragraphs. You don't also agree or disagree. That's really difficult to do. We don't sit on the fence in history. So you've set your stall out in the positive section. You've said that you agree or you disagree. So the against is your chance to say, on the other hand, some historians would disagree with me, or some historians would agree with the statement, whereas I disagree. It's important to show off that it is not what you think, it is what somebody else thinks. Now, ideally, you would have 2 paragraphs of this. For a 16-mark question, you're actually going to spend about 25 minutes on it. It's a good chunk of time, but if you are running out of time, then if you only get to 1, then it is this one. Don't sacrifice on this one. Okay, drop down to 1 paragraph on this one if you're running out of time, but hopefully you would get your chance to do 2 paragraphs here, sharing that opposite point of view as well. And then finally, the decision or your conclusion. This is much the same as the introduction in terms of just summarizing why you think the way you think. So in terms of how this would look in an exam paper then, this would be an example of my introduction here. Some of you get a little bogged down with the introduction, but it should be nice and easy. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say I agree or disagree with this statement because. Now, notice here I've left a blank. This is purposeful. I'm not just going to say I agree or disagree. As we said at the beginning, that isn't the question of do you agree or disagree. It's how far you agree. So I need to put a word in here that explains how far I agree. So I significantly agree. I significantly disagree. I, to some extent, agree. to a small extent agree. Okay, we've done lots of activities in class on that kind of sliding scale of 1 to 10, and this is no different in terms of judging how far we agree. In terms of this, because this is very simply a chance for you to summarize those 2 points that you're going to make. So you need to go into this knowing what you're going to write about. If we go back up here, your 2 points. Okay, so I agree or disagree with this statement because list your 2 points that you're going to talk about. Don't explain them, just list them. And then down here, we've got a little criteria. You're going to be thinking about how you are going to make your decision, sorry. So I've just put here, in making my judgment, I will assess how much danger each factor placed upon Elizabeth losing her throne, as this is what created tension. So just a reminder of what the question is. The main cause of tension was this thing. How far do you agree? So actually, I've got to assess. I'm a historian. I'm assessing what causes that tension. So I'm saying that actually it's about how much pressure or how much danger it put on Elizabeth losing her throne, as that's what created tension. Obviously, this will be totally individual to each question, so you are going to have to think about this criteria of how you're going to use it, and this only comes with practice. Okay, this is for those getting the absolute top marks. If you forget to do this and you come out and that's when you remember, don't panic. You can still get really, really high marks with this. This is just for those, getting 15, 16. It's because you've done this kind of thing of actually explaining your thinking of how you're going to do it. So you've done your introduction, you said how far you agree, you said how you're going to make that decision. So we now go on to our first P paragraph. Reminder, positive paragraph, so our view first. So I've put here one significant reason. Again, this is so important. Okay, this is basically saying this is important enough for me to talk about. If it's insignificant, I'm not going to write about it because I've only got 2 paragraphs. So one significant reason why I agree or disagree is due to. And here again, I'm now just following that Peel structure that we explored in in question 2. So you can go back and see that. Okay, so one significant reason why I agree or disagree is due to, for example, this meant that, this led to, consequently, as a result, all of our keywords, and therefore this reaffirms my view that this was the main cause of tension because that's our question. So just linking it back to the focus. You're going to do 2 of these. Okay, just as we set up here in our plan, positive of your view times 2. We'll then, after we've done 2, we'll then go into our against paragraph. So once again, we are just going to P this, point, evidence, explain. On the other hand, some historians would disagree with me because of this thing. Here's what I know about this thing. This meant that. And then we've got our link back here. Now our link back is actually this time arguing against what we believe, right? Okay, so I'm going to use the word admittedly. Because ultimately, I'm not going to be saying some total nonsense about what other historians might believe. I'm going to acknowledge the fact that actually they probably got a valid point, but it's just not what I agree with. So admittedly, this did cause some tension, but was not as significant as whatever my view originally was. Okay, so whatever my view was that was the original big tension maker, I'm just going to put it in there and then explain why. Okay, so that word admittedly is really important because it just shows that you don't agree with what this other person has said, but you acknowledge that it does have some weight. It does have some importance, but it's just not as important as your view. And then, of course, to finish it off, we just do our little conclusion, our decision. So overall, I think this because, and essentially you are just listing your 2 points that you've made up here to begin with. Okay, let's wait for the bell. So you just, as I said, just make sure that you know this iPad structure, know that as you go in, always start with your positives, then do your against, use the word admittedly, get your conclusion at the end, and hopefully nice and